Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macy, and I am so excited that you're joining me on the podcast today. If you're a brand new listener, welcome to the podcast. I hope you get everything that you came for and more. And I just want to tell you, find some titles that seem to resonate with you, see if you like them. And then if you do, I recommend going back to the very beginning of when this podcast started and starting there, because it will lay a very strong foundation for you where all of the concepts that I teach on the podcast make much more sense. But I do recommend that if you go back to the beginning, that every now and then you check some recent episodes, so that way you don't miss out on any free webinars or, any of the new announcements that I have going on. So welcome to the podcast. And as always, if you're a returning listener, I'm so excited that you're back. I love having you, and I'm grateful for you being here and being a supporter. Okay, you guys. So funny enough, last time I recorded the podcast, it actually was so frustrating. I recorded 2 back-to-back episodes. I didn't vibe with either of them, and I deleted both of them, and I almost quit and did not give you all a podcast because I was so frustrated. And then I just took that frustration, felt it, and was honest and transparent and recorded a podcast about, how to, what to do with your feelings when they come up, how to feel your feelings, kind of that gist. And it's funny because sometimes those are the weeks that I have when I'm recording a podcast. And then other times it's times like right now where there's not a podcast due anytime soon. I have plenty of time to come up with content between now and the due date. But I'm inspired based on something that I saw randomly online that kickstarted an emotion in my body and made me have a million thoughts that I want to address. And today, that is when you're watching someone's life. Okay, so I'm not accusing anybody here of doing this, but I'm saying you've either A, you've done it, or B, you've seen it done, or C, someone has done this to you. So that's kind of what I'm talking about throughout this episode. And what I mean is when you're watching someone's life play out, maybe online or in real life, you're observing their marriage or their partnership with someone, you're watching, what career they have, how they build a business, maybe admiration of their, what do I want to say? Their consistency in working out, things like that. So you're observing someone else's life, but then you notice yourself or someone else, if you're witnessing this or someone's doing this to you, you notice when there is that moment of must be nice to have ... Must be nice to be making that much money. Must be nice to have a business where you don't have to worry. Must be nice to have a body that looks that good after 3 kids. Must be nice to be able to afford a nanny. It must be nice to be able to X, Y, Z, right? Have a partner that absolutely adores you and doesn't yell at you and cooks for you. And we've all witnessed it, I'm sure. We may have even done it, or we've had it done to us. Can I get an amen? Okay, so let me just tell you that I was on the internet today and I saw this playing out, and I saw it actually a few weeks ago as well. And the emotion that comes up in me whenever this happens is almost now, it's not rage, but it's a deep level of frustration. And before we get into this and break it down and I explain to you why this happens and where it's coming from and how to kind of get yourself out of it if you're the one doing it, I just want to say I am not perfect, and that I actually engaged in this years and years ago before I had all of the work that I'm doing now. So before my emotional intelligence was as high as it is now, before I had the mindset work, really before I ever hired my coach, and even in the beginning stages of working with my coach, this kind of behavior was something that came out of me until I knew better. So bringing awareness to this kind of stuff is important because unless you know better, you can't do better, right? So that's what I really want to highlight in today's episode, especially if you find that you are doing this because it's just not serving you. So when people do this, you see someone with the quote unquote perfect body in your mind, and, or you see someone, getting help kind of with their kids, a nanny, or they have someone coming to clean the house, or you see a very healthy dynamic in someone's marriage, or someone has maybe a lot of money, or maybe they're building the house of their dreams, or whatever it is. They get a promotion at their job, they move up the corporate ladder, they have a strong knit family dynamic even with their extended family. It's very easy for us as humans to get into a place of subconscious compare and despair. Okay, so I'm going to say this again: subconscious compare and despair. And how you will know that someone is in subconscious kind of compare and despair is they will make comments like, it must be nice, ... right? To whatever it is that they are comparing themselves to. Or it will come out as like, oh, I'm so jealous, I wish, right? Language like this. I'm sure there are many more varieties. I haven't sat to think with a bunch of them. These are just the two most common things that I see. And I think now why it elicits such frustration in me is because now I understand, after all of the work I've been doing on myself for 7 years, I understand that whatever life I'm seeing someone else live, whatever they have, whatever qualities are inside of them, personality traits that I admire, whatever it is, I know that that did not just magically appear. That even if they were born with some kind of talent, like being an amazing singer, that there was still work done behind the scenes to even get them where they are. So if they're performing on stages, if they are being asked to sing national anthems, for instance, just for the singer example, if they are, creating an album, and I, have maybe always wanted to be a singer or something like that, it's so easy for our brain to be like, must be nice to be able to afford music lessons, must be nice to be able to have a voice like that, must be nice. And I want to highlight that this comes from a place where whatever you see in that other person, or you witness them having or experiencing in their life, that subconscious knee-jerk reaction that we have to respond that way is usually coming from this inner desire that we want what they have, or we perceive that we want what they have. And there's almost this secondary layer of dismissal that there was any kind of work involved for them to get there. So it's very easy to see someone's success of today and think that it's just so magically amazing and that there wasn't a long journey to get there. Okay, now realistically and logically, the brain can, from a conscious level, probably recognize like, oh, they've probably had to work really hard to get that, or they've probably had to do a lot of work on themselves to attract that, or that they've probably had to put in a good amount of time to create the experiences that they have. Consciously and logically and realistically, I think our brain has the capacity to do that. But many more times, it's a subconscious knee-jerk reaction where instead we're like, well, that must be nice. And it comes from this almost passive, aggressive frustrated, compare and despair place where we've dismissed whatever their journey is to almost complain that we're not in that position and we want to be. And so the key thing here that I want to point out is that if you're the person having these reactions with any aspect of someone else's life that you see, I want you to do like the work here, your emotional intelligence mindset work here is to see what that is, because that is likely an inner desire within you that you have not fulfilled, that your brain currently has limiting beliefs around and thinks is impossible for you. Okay, so that trigger of when you even feel the knee-jerk reaction to say something like that, whether you actually say it or you think it, it's likely because there's something in your spirit that desires it for yourself and you don't know how to get it. You don't know how that would ever be your experience. You have so many limiting beliefs that it's not possible for you. And so it comes out as this jealous kind of experience where you dismiss the work and the journey of the person who has it and just wallow in the self-pity of not experiencing it yourself. Okay, so this I'll just be honest and tell you some of the ways that this used to come up for me. So I would be at the store and I would observe people that would just buy whatever they wanted. Like, not even check the price tag, just put it in the cart, right? Put it in the cart. And that was very triggering to me as a young adult because I grew up in a household. This is interesting. I was thinking about this morning in the shower, but I grew up in a household where money was tight. Okay, so my mom was 15 when she got pregnant with me, 16 when she had me, and 18 whenever she got married and moved out, or maybe 19. I think it was 18 though when she got married and moved out. So my grandparents actually are the ones that raised me. And my grandparents were very hard workers, but they did like hard jobs / dirty jobs, right? So my grandma was a public school bus driver for special needs kids in Kentucky. And my papa was always the guy that did like the dirty jobs, right? Like the state jobs or the city jobs where it's like, you need to go put salt on the roads because there's about to be an ice storm. So he drove like the ice trucks or the snow trucks, right? He was the person, like if there was a late night storm and a bunch of trees fell down, he'd get a call at 2 a.m. that he needed to come out and cut up the trees and be able to clear the road so that people could get to work the next morning. So he always came home dirty, sweaty, disgusting. Before that, he, worked in sewer pipelines. And before that, he was a hog butcher, like when my mom was little. So he always did like really hard, kind of dirty jobs and for barely any pay. So I grew up seeing a lot of hard work be done and also watching my grandparents at times live in scarcity. So much so that there were times where they had to borrow from my childhood piggy bank in order to pay for things that they needed to pay for. Now, they always paid me back, so I never grew up with lack of trust that I wouldn't get my money back from them because they were always very honest in that way, and I'm grateful for that. There's no trauma there with that. But even as a child, thinking about the times where I can remember them having to ask my oma and opa, who were my great-grandparents, for money because they couldn't make ends meet. I think the both of them together, the yearly salary in our household was maybe $60K or under. So we were considered middle class, but things were really still tight. And my grandma, was a penny pincher. So she would, we would share bath water. I've talked about this in other podcast episodes around money, but that was my reality. I didn't even know that people got to have their own bath water until I was in high school. Like seriously. Okay. So I grew up in such a way where I felt a lot of fear around money. And also thinking about it this morning in the shower, I'm like, I was taught that the only way that I could have money, and this is my grandparents doing the best that they can and my great-grandparents doing the best that they could in, how they talked to me because they didn't go to college. I was a first generation college student. they taught me that the only way I could make money was to make sure that I picked a really good career, went to college, and it had to be safe. So safe probably meant like being a lawyer or being a doctor or being a nurse or something in the medical field where I would always be guaranteed a job. And then you work that job forever and you work really, really hard. And maybe if you're lucky, play the lottery because you might win the lottery one day, right? So I was thinking about this in the shower today and I'm like, no wonder I felt jealousy and compare and despair when I would watch people in the world be able to buy whatever they want, because I lived within the limiting beliefs of that is not possible for me. I picked a career, right? My career was occupational therapy. I wasn't making the money that I wanted to make, but according to how I was raised, like you pick a career and you stay there. Like that's what you're going to do the next 40 to 50 years of your life. You pick it and you stay because you spent a ton of money, close to $100,000 on student loans. You're in debt. There's no changing it now. You're stuck. And you better hope you win the lottery, right? So that was how I was taught to think about possibility until I met my coach, right? And then all of my limiting beliefs were challenged. But before all of this work where I started to change, I would watch people navigate in the world with money, and I would see people who could buy whatever they wanted. Like they could walk into a store and see a $70 pair of heels that they thought were gorgeous and buy them. And I was like, what? That must be nice to not even have to look at your bank account, because the reality for me is that I was used to, I felt safe if I had $150 in my bank account and nothing in savings, right? And so something that brought this up also is that today a memory popped up on my Facebook where it was 7 years ago this week that I attended the very first coaching retreat ever in my life. 2 months before attending this coaching retreat with my coach, I had hired my coach. So this week and the last 2 months, 7 years ago, were pivotal in the life that I experience for myself now. It was when I drew my line in the sand in full kind of desperation and decided I have to change my life. I can't keep going this way. I have no clue what I want to do. I didn't know I wanted to be a coach. I didn't know I was going to end up an entrepreneur. I didn't know I would end up the person that currently has 202 podcast episodes for people all over the world to listen to. I didn't know any of that. All I knew at the time, 7 years ago this week, or even 2 months ago when I hired my coach for group coaching, I just knew I was at a place where things had to change in my life. And so speaking of which, that meant having $150 in my bank account, I felt safe to a certain extent. When it would go under 100, that's when I started to panic. And I eventually got to the point where I'm like, I am just tired of living this way. There's got to be another way other than hoping and wishing and praying to win the lottery or going back to school again, trying to figure out what I want to do. And when I hired my coach, what she unveiled within me was there was so much trauma, that was creating or driving my decisions. There was so much unhealed stuff, even though I had had 17 years of therapy, that was impacting my decisions. There were so many limiting beliefs inside of my brain that were, driving all of my decisions. And as I started to grow, I also noticed this jealousy happening sometimes with the women that I was growing alongside with, again, before more emotional intelligence, because Lord only knows where I started. And the reason being is because I would see them get coached and they'd immediately understand and process it and know what to do with it and then go do great things after they got coaching, And for me, I wanted to often argue with the coaching. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it. It just felt so hard. It felt like I was going to be stuck forever. And so meanwhile, while I'm arguing internally with the coaching that I'm getting, I'm watching them accept the coaching and move forward in their life. And I remember there got to be a point after 2 years where I was like, I just need a break from coaching. It's just so hard. I need to take a year off and just figure out myself and my life and what the hell is going on with me. And I remember being so upset because by the time I came back into coaching, the same women that never stopped working on themselves and never stopped, having their brain just challenged were making like $400,000 to $700,000, had changed their life, had really, healthy dynamics within different relationships. And I was still struggling and still stuck. And I just remember thinking like, it must be nice to be able to continue going. And it must be nice to like be able to do all of these amazing things and not taking any responsibility for the fact that I also was creating my results, that they created the results they were getting, and I was creating the results I was getting. I just didn't like my results. But it's easier for us to look at someone else's life and then go into like a victim mentality where it's like, it's not fair. They have this, and that's what helps them. They have this healthy family, and then that helps them. It's like we use our own hard experiences a lot of times against ourselves. And one of the things that it brought up for me in seeing that photo from 7 years ago is that I know that there have been people who have done that to me, right? Where they're like, it must be nice to be able to, they'll say things like this. It must be nice to be able to work 3 days a week and have 4 days off and make X amount of money. And I just like these days, right? Because I've done so much work around this and I don't feel that way ever looking at someone else's life. Like I don't have the same responses anymore just from how much work I've done. But when people do this to me, one, I have compassion because I'm like, listen, I get it. I've been there. You're human. I get it. But the frustration part that comes out of me is like, in that moment, they have totally forgotten the sacrifices for anybody, not just me, but the sacrifices that are required to go create a dream life. Whether, that means having the job of your dreams, having the family of your dreams, having the relationship of your dreams, having the money of your dreams, having, items or materialistic things of your dreams, like having experiences where you get to travel the world because you have the time freedom or money freedom to do that. Like none of that someone has created comes without hard work and sacrifice. It doesn't matter how easy it looks today. Like a lot of times this is the problem. We look at their today, okay, and we're like, oh, that must be nice. And we forget how long has it taken them to get there. So when I looked at that picture from 7 years ago, the light bulb that went off in my brain was like, yeah, when people look at my today and they're internally or out loud saying things to me like, that must be nice. Like, God, I wish I could do that. My response wants to be like, you can walk through the trenches, crawl in the mud, feel like literal shit daily. You know what I mean? You can have it if you're willing for it to be hard. Like if you're not expecting life to just hand everything to you on a platter and be easy, yes, you can have it. Like, yes, life can also offer up some ease when we really believe in that. But also, yeah, you're going to feel like trash. I tell the women in my hybrid experience program all the time, I said, there's no difference between me and where I am today and where you all have the potential to be, no matter how different that looks from even my life, right? Like wherever you want to be, it's so possible. The secret is my willingness to feel like garbage, to feel like trash, for things to feel like absolute shit every single day and to stand back up. So when I saw that photo from 7 years ago, let me tell you about that girl, okay? And you can just know that if you ever have that experience with anyone, not me, not just me, but if you have that experience with anyone where you're like, it must be nice, or I'm so jealous of what they get to experience, I'm going to tell you about the girl 7 years ago that made decisions that has put me in the position that I am in now. When I hired my coach, I had been a graduated working out in the world occupational therapist for about 1 year, maybe even less. In my role as an occupational therapist, you had to build a caseload, which meant that you had to build relationships with what they call service coordinators. And the service coordinators are the ones that meet with the families first and, start the evaluation process on a child qualifying for a therapist. So you basically have to get into a network where service coordinators know you, like you, trust you, and will refer kids to you in order to make money. Now, with my job as an occupational therapist, which I went to school 5.5 years to do, one of my motivators for that job was, one, I wanted to create my own schedule because more than money, I value my time. I find my time extremely valuable. I take my time extremely seriously. I spend it exactly how I want it, and I wanted a career that would allow that. So when I chose careers in college, like I originally started in nursing, I did not like that at all. That was not for me. And when I switched to occupational therapy and, started at a new university, I decided to go into a field that would create potential money security and for sure time freedom. Okay, so I knew what I was signing up for even whenever I went into college. Okay, so when people would even say to me as an occupational therapist, it must be nice to just work with 4 kids a day or a 4-hour workday, I would get annoyed then, even though I didn't have the work that I have now. I would get annoyed then because I'm like, then go to college for something that allows you to have time freedom. Like that's what I did. I Googled and learned what jobs would help me find time freedom, and I went and I did that. Right. So in some way, even back then, I took responsibility for the time freedom piece. But long story short, like I had to build relationships with service coordinators. I had to perform really greatly as an OT and make sure that those families and I bonded so that I would keep getting referrals. As an occupational therapist, doing what I did, working with birth to age 3, they call it early intervention, I did not get paid for if a family called in sick and canceled. I didn't get paid if I showed up to their house, even if I drove an hour and they weren't there because they forgot. I did not get paid any kind of reimbursement other than mileage. I could claim my mileage. So a lot of times it was a freaking challenge. I didn't get health insurance. I had no health insurance benefits, no 401k. And on average, in a month, I would make about $3,000. That's what I was making as an OT primarily, because you don't get paid based on, how many hours you're driving and showing up. You get paid based on the session that you actually do. So for instance, I could be in a session and if in 15 minutes a child who's 1.5 years old falls asleep, then I only get paid for 15 minutes. Never mind I drove 30 minutes to an hour to their house. Never mind that I really need them to perform for 45 minutes so that I can get paid, right? If they fall asleep in 15 minutes, I get paid for 15 minutes. Nothing else matters. So things were very, very challenging for me. And even though my hourly rate on paper was phenomenal, it took so much work to actually make any kind of real money. And that was honestly very exhausting. So I had a side gig, right? For those of you that have followed me for a long time, I was doing skincare and I was doing that in my spare time. And I just knew like there was just something else. There was just something calling me and I had no idea what it was. And so when I decided to hire my coach, I did not have money. I was 24. I had no money in savings. Okay. If there had ever been an emergency, I just would have been screwed, or I would have had to go groveling and begging for my grandparents and my great-grandparents, which I will say that they would have helped me, but they also would have expected, me to pay them back, even if it wasn't right away. And I would have wanted to do that. Okay. So the fact of the matter is when I made decisions 7 years ago to put myself in powerful rooms where I could learn and I could grow, that was not an easy decision. I cannot even tell you or count the amount of times in the last 7 years that my bank account has been negative. I I can't even tell you how many times I've been charged overdraft fees on a daily basis because I'm so broke. I can't even pull myself out of the negative bank statements. Like, I remember there being a year, this was probably not even that long ago, maybe 3.5 or 4 years ago, where my bank account was negative. Okay, so then my bank charged me an $80 overdraft fee, and they charged it daily for 6 days. And then I got my paycheck, and my paycheck barely got me into the green. And then I had to make that last for 2 weeks. And I lived like that for years because my number one priority was investing in myself to get myself out of the hole. So when people approach me and they say things like, it must be nice to be able to work this many days a week, or to, have your life as an entrepreneur, or to make X amount of money, like, they see the now. And I'm like, oh, well, if you wanted to live and walk in my shoes for the last 7 years, like, you could totally do that. And you would probably really, really find it difficult. So you would have to build the skills to either pull yourself out of it, or you'd simply quit. Like, those were my options. Either pull myself out of this and take full responsibility until I get where I'm wanting to go, or just absolutely quit. And most people will quit because they don't want the discomfort of, like, the reality of what happens, especially in entrepreneurship when you're building a business. That shit is not pretty. Do any of you all watch Shark Tank? Have you ever heard, like, the stories of the people in Shark Tank, like how they ate ketchup sandwiches? That is not a joke, okay? That's not a joke. Now, I have not eaten ketchup sandwiches. It's never come to that point, but I've eaten a lot of ramen noodles, and that's not a joke. I've eaten a lot of canned vegetables, and that's not a joke. I've bypassed buying, for 7 years, I didn't buy myself new outfits or anything. Any new money that I had come in literally paid for more coaching to be like, get me the hell out of this mental prison that I am in. I want my mind so sharp and so squeaky clean and able to catch my own BS and my own limiting beliefs so badly. Like, I will spend every last penny until I have gotten myself to the place where I want to be, no matter how hard it is. And that's what I did for 7 years, really probably about 5 years, until my life started to actually change. So when you see someone's success, whether, like, let's say you see a healthy marriage and you're like, must be nice to have a partner who doesn't yell or scream at you, or who cooks for you. You have to take accountability of, like, if you don't have that in your marriage or your relationship, what are you tolerating, right? What are you tolerating? Because if you have a reaction where you see something and that looks really nice and you don't have it, that's your system saying, like, man, I really, like, I feel that I'm deserving of that. I feel like, I could have something like that. But you're not allowing it based on your tolerance of what you're tolerating that doesn't match it. Right? So that's the kind of responsibility we have to take. Like, whenever I was comparing myself to people who were able to pay for things just without thinking if they wanted to, and I would have the response of, oh, I'm so jealous, or that must be so nice. What I was doing in that moment for myself was tolerating this mindset that was not serving me at all. Like, tolerating a mindset of lack and self-sabotage and not a good relationship with money, and believing that in order for it to change, that I would have to be in the same position for life or to play the lottery and win. I still hear my grandparents say to this day, they're like, I hope we win the lottery. That's the only way we'll ever be able to make, any kind of money. And I have compassion, and I also feel so sad that that is the box that their brain lives in for possibility, right? Like, that it's by chance, that it's by luck, that it's by 1 in a billion, that, there's no ability to go out and create. And it's not an age thing, because I am surrounded by people in a lot of different networks where some people decide to change their life at 60 years old, and they go create amazing things for the rest of their life, as long as they live from that point forward. You can change your life at any age. You just have to make the decision. And so I just want to say from this episode that if you ever notice yourself in compare and despair, if you ever notice yourself, being jealous of something that someone else has, or you just notice this, another person doing this with you, like they look at your life and they're like, must be nice. I want you to even go back and think of all of the things you've had to do, all of the sacrifices you've had to make, all of the hard moments that you've had to jump over, all the hurdles that you've had to, push yourself through in order to have what you have. How many crappy relationships did you go through before you maybe had, the amazing marriage that you have now? How many negative bank accounts did you have before you have the financial situation you're in now? How many failed businesses did you have before you have maybe the thriving business you have now? How many jobs did you get fired from before getting promoted and moved up into a position that you love at your job now? Like, if you go back and you even look at your journey, you're going to be happy for the version of you that you were at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 that one day drew their line in the sand, that version of you that said, no freaking more. No freaking more. We're not going to compare and despair with anybody else's life. We're going to take charge and become the person that creates the life that feels good for us. That's not for anybody else to do. No one is coming to rescue you. As sad as that feels, as hard as that sounds, no one's coming to rescue you. If you're not happy with any aspect of your life, that is for you to change. If something is not working, you need to develop the skills to figure out how to make it work. Okay? So, like someone even said recently, like, how can I guarantee results? Okay. And I think it was in terms of like, even if they invested in one of my programs, like, how can I guarantee results? You guarantee your results. You have to be the person that guarantees your results. No one is guaranteeing even the life that I have now other than myself. And that guarantee is based on how I show up for myself every single day, the things that I do in my business, the problems I'm willing to solve, the hurdles I'm willing to overcome. Like, nothing even now is easily handed to me. I work for every single thing that I have, and I jump a lot of hurdles and I problem solve. So a lot of times people want whatever decision they're making to be the answer and to mean that things get to be easy. And I'm going to tell you, you're never excused from the hard work. At any level, you're going to have to do some level of work, and you're going to have to take responsibility for that. Okay, so I hope that this episode helps you in case you are ever stuck in this, or you're experiencing it. You have people in your life doing this to you. This is where it's coming from, okay, to help you kind of understand where they're coming from. And you can have compassion for them and empathize with them, that you understand, like, God, I see that you're stuck in this spiral where you want it to be different and you just don't know how. But the truth of the matter is, until they take responsibility and they do something different than they're used to doing to change it, it's not going to change, right? They're going to have to decide to draw their line in the sand and become a version of themselves that goes and creates whatever it is that they want, from very small things to very big things. And this is what I help my clients do: develop the emotional intelligence skills to create lives that feel good to them, to make changes that they're going to be happy with in their life, from a micro level all the way to a macro level. Okay, because the reason that people don't go after what they want is because of resistance to emotions they're not willing to feel. Most people, like in my shoes 7 years ago, most people aren't willing to feel the discomfort of a negative bank account. Most people are not willing to problem solve and figure out how they're going to make $80 last for weeks at a time. That's another thing. When I invested in the first coaching retreat I ever went on, I had $85 to my name. $85. That felt so scary. And also, I really believed in my coach and where I was going to go based on the work that I was doing, right? I'm so proud of that version of Macy, because there are a lot of people also that would not feel comfortable being like, I have $85 to my name with no savings and no 401k retirement and nothing, literally $85. We've got to make that work until our next paycheck. Cool, right? There are emotions that would come up in most people, like fear and anxiety and dread and, maybe even anger or rage that they don't have what they want to have. And based on our emotions drive our actions. So part of emotional intelligence is the emotional mastery of resilience and awareness and being able to tolerate and manage those uncomfortable emotions so that your emotions aren't limiting you from what's actually possible for your life. And a lot of people's emotions absolutely take them off track of what's possible because they're not willing to feel those uncomfortable emotions. Whenever you're willing to feel any emotion, there's really very little limits that will actually impact your life. That is a big thing to understand. Like, your emotions dictate everything that you're willing to do or not do in your life. And your brain wants you to feel so safe and so comfortable that it will do everything to try and keep you in your comfort zone. So that may mean you stay in a shitty, toxic relationship when really what you desire is a healthy relationship. You stay in a toxic one because you don't want to feel the feelings of being uncomfortable and leaving and having uncertainty and feeling fear. Those are all emotions. That's what I mean by emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is being able to build that resilience and regulate your nervous system to make bold choices. Okay, so if you want the fairy tale, you have to be willing to leave what doesn't feel like a fairy tale. And a lot of people find it easier to be in the must be nice, I wish, I'm so jealous. That's easier than to evaluate your own life and be like, I'm out. I'm out. No matter how scary this is, I'm out. No matter how uncertain it is, I'm out. Right? Same thing with money situations. Same thing with a job situation. People will stay in a job that is toxic and that feels like absolute crap to them because at least they know their benefits. At least they know their time off that they've earned. At least they know their coworkers, but they're unhappy every single day. It's easier to wallow in, must be nice to have a job that pays X amount of money and has these benefits and good morale. It must be nice. It's easier to just wallow in that than to be like, I'm out. I'm leaving. It's uncertain and I'm leaving. I'm afraid and I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going to go after this, but I'm leaving because I'm not going to tolerate this. So many people are stuck because of tolerance, and you have to take ownership of that. Okay. So if you notice this compare and despair behavior, you're engaging in it, just know your system is telling you exactly what you want. And it's also showing you exactly what you're tolerating. And if you don't like it, no one is coming to rescue you but you. You have to rescue you. So you have to make a very powerful decision. Okay? All right, rant over. So how funny can you go from 1 week where you have no idea what you're going to talk about on a podcast and you just delete everything to a week where you can't shut up because you feel so passionate about something based on something you saw on the internet that brought up a whole inspirational idea. So that's where we are. P.S. I just want to tell you that if you're thinking about joining the third round of the Hybrid Experience program, it will start in July of 2024. And our retreat will be in the beginning of January 2025 in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. We're going international for the first time ever. Now, the Hybrid Experience Room is advanced emotional intelligence. So there are a few things that I want to make you aware of in case this is your first time hearing it. If you have not been listening to the podcast for a while, this room is going to feel probably overwhelming to you. If you have not been coached by me personally, this room, it can possibly feel overwhelming to you. You can definitely make it, but you have to have had some foundational work for sure. If you're wanting to build your foundational emotional intelligence because you feel like you're just too much of a beginner to really hang in an advanced level room, I recommend doing one-on-one coaching with me, even if it's for 3 months, or joining the Equip Society program, which will teach you all the foundational emotional intelligence skills. Now, if you've had coaching from me or for someone else. If you're big on mindset work, if you read a lot of personal development books, if you've, listened to a lot of podcasts, if you listen to my podcast, then there is a likelihood that you're much more ready for the hybrid experience room. But the reason that I want to go ahead and prime you about this, even though it doesn't start till July of 2024, is because many of you that filled out the form about wanting to eventually be in this room, you all said that you needed a longer payment plan to make it happen, that so many of you want to get yourself out of the rut that you're in your life. You want to change maybe some things about your career or feel happy in your career. You want to, be able to achieve those personal life goals that you have. You want to maybe grow in your business. Like, you want that. But so many of you said, like, I have to have a 6-month payment plan, or I have to have enough time to get myself in the room. So what I want to make you aware of is that starting January 1st of 2024, you are going to be able to get yourself in the room for the lowest monthly payment plan available. I am offering an 8-month payment plan so that your monthly fee is much smaller. And I'm also going to waive the sales tax that normally I'm supposed to charge. I'm just going to waive it, and I'm going to eat that. And anybody that signs up in January will also get a bonus gift in your enrollment package when those get sent out. Okay. So this should give those of you the opportunity to get yourself in the room if you really, really want to be there. Okay, so just make sure that you're on my email list. Specifically, go to the hybrid experience part and sign up for the VIP hybrid experience email list, because that's where I send most of those emails. I try not to send my main email list a bunch of hybrid experience emails if that's not of interest to them. So make sure that you go to MacyRenee.com, click the hybrid experience tab, and sign up for the wait list so that you don't miss those announcements. Because come January, it's going to open, and you're going to have the opportunity to snag your spot at the lowest monthly payment plan price it will be able to be. So if you're wanting to change your life, you're wanting to get in that room, you're wanting to do advanced emotional intelligence work, that is going to be your opportunity where you can get in at the lowest possible price. Okay. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. If you don't already have me on social media, find me on there, Macy Renee Coaching on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, although on TikTok I'm not very active at this time. But otherwise, I will see you guys again next week. Have an amazing week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at MacyRenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at MacyRenee.com anytime you want, so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.